I came across Big Fork Brands recently, and it's become one of those finds you actually want to tell people about, and you don't find that often. Okay. They're doing bacon sausage, plus these really solid pork jerky snacks and Chicago style sauces. Basically, upgrade anything you throw them on burgers, hot dogs, fries, throw it on there. It works.
But I bet it's packed full of junk.
Actually, it's made with clean ingredients and real care. That's small batch with no shortcuts, and people are obsessed with the flavor. You can go over to bigforkbrands.com, use our code INFOGO at checkout, and get 20% off anything on the site.
You can find the link and our code in the show notes. Welcome to the podcast. I'm William,
And I'm Kat,
and this is Info on the Go.
feeding your curiosity wherever you go.
The history of the vending machine. I think we all know what a vending machine is. You put your money into a machine, and sometimes it shares back with you. But if it doesn't, there's no refund, no explanation, just silence. And at that moment, you realize something strange. Without it, you trusted it without even thinking.
You walked up, saw a slot, saw a price, and assumed a deal would be honored. Money goes in, product comes out. Simple, right? But that's a relationship. And it's a weird one. Okay? Because, because you're not dealing with a person. There's no shopkeeper watching you. There's no one to negotiate with, no one to complain to, just a mechanism, metal, plastic circuits. And yet, somehow, you expect fairness.
And most of the time, you get it. But that quiet agreement between human and machine, the idea something lifeless will follow the rules, take your money, and give you exactly what you paid for, it feels modern, right? It feels like something born out of the digital age, or at least the industrial world. But what if we told you it started over 2,000 years ago in a temple?
But so long before soda machines, long before snacks behind glass, before electricity, before modern currency systems, okay, there was no paper money. There was a problem, a very human problem. Surprise, right? People were taking more than they were supposed to. And the solution wasn't more guards, there wasn't stricter rules. It was a machine. An invention credited to Hero of Alexandria, an engineer, mathematician, and in many ways one of the earliest designers of automated systems. He built a device that dispensed holy water.
But only if you paid for it. You drop a coin in, the machine responds, it gives you what you're supposed to pay for, and it's supposed to be reliable. It's a simple exchange. But inside that simple exchange is something revolutionary, trust enforced by design. That same idea, coin for outcome, input for reward, never really went away. It just evolved from sacred spaces to subway stations, from gum and cigarettes to soda empires, from mechanical levers to touchscreen interfaces, and, well, AI driven inventory systems. Vending machines sell everything from snacks to electronics, even cars.
But at their core, they're all solving the same problem Hero was dealing with 2 millennia ago. How do you create a system where people get exactly what they paid for without needing another human involved? And maybe more importantly, why are we so willing to trust it? Because once you start looking closely, vending machines aren't just about convenience. They're about psychology, they're about control, and sometimes they're about what happens when trust breaks. From ancient ingenuity to modern automation, from clever engineering to quiet manipulation, this is the story of one of the most overlooked inventions in everyday life, the vending machine. And it all begins with a coin, a mechanism, and a very old idea that still hasn't let go of us. Or have we not let go of it?
I think both.
Hmm. The world
So,
may never know.
how many licks are at the center of a Tootsie Pop? One, two, three. The world may never know. So, but at its core, a vending machine exists to remove a person from the transaction. So there's no cashier, no waiting in line, no conversation, just you, a machine, and a simple decision.
Which, I mean, it sounds less anxiety ridden, right? You don't have to worry about somebody judging you for your food decision.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about Sheila behind the counter going, this is a weird combination.
Oh, yeah. What are you doing?
Or I guess Jack, Zach, Tom, whoever. Somebody behind the counter is like not judging you because it's a vending machine.
Indeed.
But
Indeed.
but this all sounds like a small convenience. But it really does represent a massive shift in how commerce works. Because traditionally, buying something required another human being. Someone had to take your money, measure or retrieve the product, and make sure the exchange was fair. That person was the system. They enforced the rules. Vending machines replaced that system with something else entirely, a mechanism. And the appeal? Well, is obvious.
Speed. You don't wait. Convenience. It's always there. There's also anonymity, right? Unless somebody's behind you waiting for the same vending machine. That last one matters more than people like to admit, the anonymity part. There's a reason certain products, snacks, cigarettes, even novelty items, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to interact. You just press a button and move on. But underneath all of that, convenience is a much harder problem. Because the moment you remove the human middleman, you lose judgment, flexibility, and even oversight. A person can correct mistakes. A person can decide if something feels unfair. A machine can't. And half the time, you might get it to work, and then other times you just want to flip it over, and then you get in trouble for that. So the real question becomes, how do you get a machine to fairly exchange goods for money?
So, how do you get a machine to fairly exchange goods for money? Not most of the time, not approximately, but every single time. Because that moment it fails, even once, that trust, well, it starts to crack. Like when you're at the hospital at 3 a.m. and you really want that pack of crackers and it gets stuck.
Or
Ah.
those gummies.
But yeah, but long before computers, long before electricity, engineers were already trying to solve this problem. They didn't have software, sensors, or digital verification systems. What they had instead was something more fundamental, mechanical logic. Physical systems designed to behave predictably, cause and effect built into metal, weight, balance, and motion. Coin drops here, something moves there, a lever shifts, a valve opens, then just as precisely, it closes again.
There's no thinking, no decision making aside from what snack you want, just rules hardwired into the structure of the machine itself. And if those rules are designed correctly and the outcome is exactly the same always, you put something in, you get something out, right? That idea feels simple now, almost invisible because we're so used to it. But at one point in history, it was anything but obvious. So, in fact, this exact problem, how to create a fair, self operating system of exchange, which sounds impossible, right, goes all the way back to ancient civilizations, to a time when coins were still becoming standardized, when public spaces weren't controlled the way they are today, and when people, given the opportunity, would absolutely take more than their share because, greed. That's where the story really begins, not with convenience, but with control.
So, to understand where vending machines come from, you have to understand the person behind the idea. His name was Hero of Alexandria. He lived in the first century AD in Roman Egypt, mainly in the city of Alexandria, one of the most advanced intellectual centers of the ancient world. This wasn't some isolated inventor working in obscurity. Alexandria was a hub of science, mathematics, and engineering, home to one of the most famous libraries in history. And we did an episode on that. It's called the Library of Alexandria.
Very fascinating.
Yep.
Very, very, let's learn some more today, okay?
And, you know, Hero, he fit into this world.
So he was a Greek engineer, a mathematician, and a prolific writer, which was very much part of Alexandria back in the day, especially with the library at the time. Okay, he was probably, I don't know if that's factual, we can't really go back and see, but he was probably part of the conversations at the Library of Alexandria. Much of what we know about his work comes from texts where he didn't just describe inventions. He explained how they worked, step by step, mechanism by mechanism. But what makes Hero interesting isn't just what he built, it's how he thought. Because Hero wasn't just solving practical problems, he was exploring how machines could create predictable outcomes, how you could design a system that behaves the same way every single time someone interacts with it.
And sometimes he took that idea in a very unexpected direction. One of his most famous creations was the He Holy Pill. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. But it's often described as the first steam engine, and we talked about that too in somewhere. And I'm gonna just kind of describe it here. It was a hollow sphere mounted on an axis. You would put water inside, it would be heated. That would produce the steam, which escaped through the angled nozzles. And as the steam shot out, it caused it to spin on its axis. But it didn't power anything. It didn't power factories. It didn't drive industrial. In fact, it really didn't do anything at all. But it did set the standard for later inventions. But that's not the point here. The point is that Hero understood something fundamental. Energy could be converted into motion, and motion, well, it could be controlled.
Now, that is a huge leap. And he didn't stop there, right? Hero also designed automata, which was mechanical devices that could perform sequences of actions on their own. These weren't simple gadgets. Some were elaborate setups used in temples and theaters where figures would move, doors would open, and scenes would unfold automatically, all powered by weights, pulleys, and carefully timed mechanisms. And I feel like they still use that in theater today. Even in movies, it's represented where they use like sandbags or what have you, especially in Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to move the curtains back and forth, trap doors to have things move.
Right.
Yeah,
And even some props that drop down from the ceiling, like a night sky or clouds.
but could you imagine during this time, the people seeing this, they would have thought it's aliens.
It's supernatural. It's witchcraft. Okay, burn him at the stake.
Oh, that's right. That's right. This is the time of witches. Now is the time of aliens. Is that right?
Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed.
It's really Hero with his engineering skills because he's making all of this stuff happen, right? And he becomes kind of an early experienced designer because he wasn't just building machines that worked. He was building machines that felt a certain way to people using them, machines that inspired awe, curiosity, and even belief.
If I could just have a window of time, I would have loved to see him in his like thinking mode, if that makes any sense. Like I would have loved to see him just considering his next idea. That fascinates me more than anything.
Yeah,
Because you have to think at that time in history, we're thinking about AD, okay, before almost before written history. And that is crazy to me that we can even go back that far and say, wow, this man was really doing something back in the day. In temples, especially, that mattered. Because if a device could create the appearance of control, if it could respond to an action in a precise and repeatable way, it could reinforce the idea that something larger was at work. And that brings us directly to one of his most fascinating inventions. Not a steam engine, not a theatrical automation, but something much simpler, and in some ways, much more influential. A machine that took a coin and gave something back. The first vending machine.
and that first vending machine, well, first, the setting of the world's first vending machine wasn't a marketplace or a shop, it was a temple. In the ancient world, temples were, well, they were highly structured spaces where rituals were carefully controlled, and one common element in those rituals was the use of holy water. But there was a problem. With no one consistently monitoring distribution, well, people would often take more than they were supposed to. A little extra here, a little extra there. Well, it really multiplied across large numbers of visitors. This meant that it couldn't be sustained this way. Instead of assigning guards or relying on stricter oversight, Hero of Alexandria, he approached the problem with engineering. His solution was simple in concept but revolutionary in execution. If you want holy water, you pay for it.
Now, the mechanism he designed worked with a precision that feels surprisingly modern. Coin dropped into the machine didn't just fall into a container, it landed on a small pan that was part of a carefully balanced system. The weight of the coin caused the pan to tilt, which pulled down a connected lever. And that movement opened a valve, allowing a controlled amount of water to flow out. But the brilliance of the design was in what happened next. As the pan tilted, the coin would slide off and fall away into a collection box. Without the weight of the coin, the pan reset. The lever returned to its original position, and the valve closed. The flow stopped automatically. Every step of the process coin, weight, movement, release, reset wasn't built into the physical structure of the machine itself.
What he created was one of the most clever devices. It was an early form of programmable logic using nothing but physics. There was no electronics because they didn't have electricity, no decisions being made in real time, just a system designed that, well, it would always produce the same outcome. It was automation in its purest form, and it enforced trust through mechanics rather than human oversight. A person might be inconsistent, distracted, or persuaded, but the machine, well, it would behave the same way every time. And there's something almost amusing about the fact that even in ancient Rome, people were already trying to take more than they should, testing limits, bending rules, only to be met with a device that, well, just simply wouldn't allow it. But if people weren't bending rules to begin with, we wouldn't have the vending machine. So,
That's true. One bad apple does ruin the bunch. All right, there is also a lesson there. If you imagine standing there in that temple, the experience itself must have felt almost uncanny. You approach a device that looks, unfamiliar. You drop a coin in, and for a brief moment, nothing happens. Then you hear movement, a shift you can't fully see. And suddenly, water begins to flow, not unpredictably, but in a measured, controlled amount. Then it stops. The system resets, ready for the next person. Whether or not people understood the mechanics behind it, they understood the outcome. You put something in, you get something out. It's a simple exchange, but one that established a pattern of trust between humans and machines that has lasted for more than 2,000 years.
so why didn't it take off? For all of its ingenuity, the vending machine didn't spark a wave of innovation across the ancient world. It didn't spread from temple to marketplace or evolve into a broader system of automated trade. Instead, it really remained a clever, isolated solution to a very unique problem. And the reasons for that say just as much about society as they do about technology.
First, the economic foundation wasn't there. While coins did exist in the ancient world, they weren't as standardized, widespread, or even universally trusted as modern currency. And by standardized, they were not all the same weight. So that would be really hard to manipulate a weighted device. A machine like the one designed by Hero of Alexandria depends on consistency, coins of predictable weight and value. Without that, the entire system becomes unreliable. If one coin is slightly heavier or lighter than the other, the mechanism might fail or be exploited. In a world where currency systems were still developing, that kind of precision was hard to guarantee.
But then there's the issue of labor. In ancient Rome and much of the surrounding world, labor was not just available, it was abundant and inexpensive, largely due to, well, slavery. If you needed someone to distribute goods or monitor usage or manage a resource, it was often easier and cheaper to assign a person to the task than it was to build and maintain a machine because automation tends to rise when, labor is expensive or scarce. In this case, it wasn't either.
And perhaps most importantly, there simply wasn't widespread demand or automated retail. The idea of convenience as we understand it today, quick self service access to goods at any hour, for the most part. I mean, you'll still find 24-hour places somewhere and a self checkout. Wasn't a driving force in ancient economies. Markets were social spaces, transactions were personal. The presence of a seller wasn't a problem to solve. It was an expected part of daily life.
And all of this points to a larger insight. Technology doesn't spread just because it exists. It spreads because there's a need, because it fits the social conditions of the time.
Hero's vending machine was brilliant. It solved a real problem with elegance and precision, provided there wasn't too many forgeries. But outside of that specific context, the world wasn't ready for it. It wasn't that the invention failed. It was that it arrived too early. He was ahead of his time, which is unfortunate for some folks. A solution waiting for a society that didn't yet have the problem it was designed to solve.
And I say before we get into the long silent period of the vending machine, I say let's take a small break.
Yes.
Okay, we'll be right back. Hit this vending machine and see about getting some crackers. So now that we're back,
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
have you thought about what you're getting your mom for Mother's Day? At Cozy Earth, they have a full line of apparel, PJs, shirts, socks, you name it, they have it. And if you buy any of their bedding, they have a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty, free shipping on orders over $50 or more. And our listeners get an exclusive discount of 21% off just by using our code INFOGO at checkout. And you can do that at cozyearth.com. Find the link and the code in the show notes. If you're laying mulch, bedding animals, covering seeds, or just want your property looking right, there's one name you need to know. Irwin Farms, Middle Georgia's #1 wheat straw provider. When it comes to quality wheat straw, it matters. Clean, consistent, and ready to work because they don't cut corners, they bale it. Whether you're a homeowner, gardener, farmer, or you're just getting your hands dirty for the first time, they've got you covered. You can find the link in the show notes. Just Google Middle Georgia's #1 wheat straw provider. Either way, you'll find Irwin Farms. What happened next isn't a leap forward, it's a step back. As the Roman world began to fragment and decline, so did many of the systems that supported complex engineering. Trade networks weakened, urban centers shrank, and the kind of institutional knowledge that places like Alexandria had cultivated, well, they started to fade. The result wasn't the complete disappearance of technology, but a shift in what technology was used for and what problems it was meant to solve.
The kind of precise experimental engineering associated with figures like Hero of Alexandria became far less common, not because people suddenly forgot how to build, but because the conditions that encouraged that level of innovation, stable economies, large cities, centralized knowledge, were no longer as strong or as widespread. Engineering didn't vanish, it narrowed.
Instead of machines designed for controlled experiences or automated transactions, the focus moved toward essential infrastructure. Water mills, windmills, and mechanical clocks became the dominant forms of complex machinery. These devices weren't about convenience or consumer interaction. They were about survival, productivity, and timekeeping. They solved big, practical problems: grinding grain, managing resources, organizing daily life. And in that shift, something subtle but important happened.
Machines stopped being interactive. They became background systems, tools that worked continuously rather than devices you engaged with directly for a transaction. The idea of putting something into a machine and receiving something in return, well, the core concept behind vending, it really quietly faded from everyday life. But the problem that vending machines solved didn't go away.
Yeah, people still needed fair exchanges. Resources still needed to be controlled. Trust still needed to be enforced. And those challenges didn't disappear. They were just handled by people instead of machines. So for centuries, the idea itself of automated self-service exchange essentially went dormant, not lost, not erased, just unused. But it was waiting because eventually the world would change again. And when it did, that old idea of coin in, product out, well, Hero's invention would come back to life.
Everything changes when you reach the Industrial Revolution, right? Okay, that's a boom in industry and machinery and how everything needs to be automated and be faster. Okay. For centuries, the idea behind vending machines had been sitting dormant, not because it didn't work, but because the world didn't need it. That begins to shift in the late 18th and 19th centuries as industrialization starts reshaping daily life in ways that make automation not just useful, but necessary.
First, there's mass production. Goods are no longer handcrafted in small quantities. They're produced in large volumes consistently and cheaply. That creates a new challenge. How do you distribute all of this efficiently? You now have standardized products that can be sold in, well, standardized ways. And that's the first piece of the puzzle.
Then comes urban life. Cities began to grow rapidly as people move in for work, populations concentrate, schedules tighten, and time becomes more structured. People are moving, commuting, working long hours. The slower, more personal marketplace model starts to feel inefficient. There's less patience for waiting, less need for conversation, and more demand for speed.
And maybe most importantly, coin currency becomes standardized and reliable. This is critical because, unlike the ancient world during Hero's time, where variations in coin, weight, and value could, well, it could disrupt his machine, industrial economies depended on uniformity. A coin isn't just a piece of metal anymore. It's a consistent unit of exchange, and that makes it something a machine can trust. Put all of that together, mass produced goods, dense urban populations, and reliable currency, and now you have the right conditions.
So now society is ready for automation, and almost immediately, the idea of the vending machine reappears. So, one of the earliest modern examples shows up in England in the 1880s, created by Percival Everett. His invention was simple: a coin operated machine that dispensed postcards. You insert a coin, the mechanism triggers, and out pops a single card. It's not flashy, it's not complex, but it works.
Yeah. And more importantly, it fits perfectly into the world it's entering. Postcards, well, they're standardized. Travelers and city dwellers want quick access to them. And the transaction doesn't require human judgment, just a simple exchange. At the same time, other ideas are appearing in public transit systems. Coin operated machines, well, they began showing up in train stations and other urban infrastructure, reinforcing the idea that machines can reliably handle money and access. But what's different now isn't just the technology, it's the demand.
For the first time, people don't just accept automation, they prefer it in certain situations because it's faster, it's predictable, and that's the turning point. The vending machine is no longer a clever, isolated invention sitting in a temple. It becomes part of a broader shift toward a world where machines handle routine transactions. The idea hasn't changed much since the Hero of Alexandria, but now, finally, the world has caught up to it because poor guy was like centuries,
Ahead of
if
his
not
time.
almost, if not almost a millennia ahead of his time.
In the United States, the vending machine doesn't arrive as a grand invention from a single breakthrough moment. It spreads quietly, one small product at a time, until it becomes part of everyday life. Early machines, well, they're simple, almost primitive by modern standards, but they solved a very unique problem in urban cities. One of the first successful categories is chewing gum. Gum is cheap, standardized, and it's easy to dispense. It doesn't require explanation or preparation. You just insert your coin, you get a small piece of gum in return. That simplicity is what makes, the automation perfect.
Around the same time, peanut dispensers began appearing in public spaces as well. Again, the logic is the same: small goods, low cost, high demand, and no need for human interaction. These early machines aren't trying to replace stores, they're trying to remove friction from moments where a store isn't practical or necessary.
A key player in the early American expansion is the Thomas Adams Company. By the late 19th century, chewing gum, well, it had become a mass market product, and the company saw an opportunity in automated distribution. In 1888, some of the first gum vending machines began appearing in New York City subway stations. The location, well, is important because subways are fast moving, they're crowded, and time sensitive environments. People aren't there to shop, they're just passing through. And this really makes them an ideal place for vending machines where transactions need to be instant and effortless. And from there, that idea expands rapidly.
Once the basic model proves successful, new products start to appear. Supply, demand. Soda machines follow, offering bottled drinks in increasingly accessible public spaces. Cigarette vending machines became widespread in the early 20th century. Most of those have died out. I don't see very much of them anymore.
No, I think they're against the law in the United States.
Really? I didn't
I,
know it went that
I,
far,
I-
though
I'm
I'm not surprised.
I'm pretty sure because you have to be a certain age to buy them now, where a vending machine can't card you. But
That's right. I think it
before,
did change when everybody hit 21 as a limit.
yeah, but I remember being able to walk into, a Waffle House or something other, and they had those cigarette vending machines.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. Yes, I remember those. I'm glad we're the same old right now.
I think my experience with cigarette vending machines might be a little different than yours, but I
For
don't know.
sure. I saw them fading out, whereas you saw them introduced and fade out. Okay, there's a difference. You saw their beginning and end.
I don't know about their beginning, but I was definitely in the height of their success.
Okay, maybe I'm aging you a bit. Middle and
Okay,
end. Does that better?
that works. Not that old. Each new category reinforces the same pattern. If a product can be standardized, portioned, and reliably delivered, it can probably be, well, automated. And with each expansion, something subtle begins to shift in culture itself.
Convenience stops being a bonus. It starts becoming an expectation. People no longer think of vending machines as a novelty or a workaround. They begin to assume that certain needs should be met instantly without waiting and without interaction. The presence of a machine quietly changes what normal access to goods looks like in public life. And that leads to a big question that no one really is asking directly. Uh, But everyone is answering through their behavior.
Yeah, and at some point, we stop asking, should a machine sell this? And just ask, can it sell this? Once vending machines proved themselves with small, low risk products like gum, peanuts, and, well, cigarettes, the model didn't stay limited for long. The logic was simple. If a machine could reliably take a coin and deliver a standardized item, then the only real question left was how far that system could be pushed.
Machines were no longer just dispensing novelty items, they were now handling everyday consumer behavior quietly, consistently, and without supervision. From there, the expansion into soda machines and broader retail wasn't just natural, it was, well, inevitable.
Yeah, because vending machines work because they quietly align with some of the strongest patterns in human behavior, often without people even noticing it. At the most basic level, they deliver instant gratification. You make a decision, you insert payment, and within seconds, you get a physical reward. There's no waiting in line, no processing delay, no uncertainty about whether the transaction will complete. That tight feedback loop, that action, that reward, that result is one of the most powerful motivations in human psychology.
Just as important is the idea of no judgment purchasing. Vending machines remove social pressure from buying decisions. There's no cashier watching, no conversation, no subtle awareness of being observed. That matters more than it might seem, especially for small or impulsive purchases. People behave differently when they feel unobserved, even in minor ways. The vending machines are designed to preserve that anonymity.
And that makes a lot of sense because if you think about like curbside pickup and DoorDash, like I wonder how all that ties into that. But the vending machine was 24/7, which kind of changes the relationship between people and consumption itself because the vending machine doesn't close unlike the stores. It doesn't take breaks. It doesn't operate on, any kind of schedule. And that reliability really created the expectation over time. People began to assume access should always be possible, not just during business hours. So convenience shifts from a luxury into a baseline assumption.
From a behavioral economics perspective, vending machines are especially effective because they reduce decisions into small, low friction choices. There's no negotiation, no upselling, no complexity. You're not comparing options across a long conversation. You're selecting from a limited visual set of outcomes. Fewer choices and lower effort make action more likely. The easier decision, the more often it gets made. And the machines themselves are designed to reinforce that simplicity.
Many of these use glass fronts so the product is visible before purchase. Then you have lighting because that plays a role too, because products are now illuminated to stand out from their environment, really kind of highlighting their look. Even button placement is intentional because controls are arranged to minimize hesitation and maximize clarity. All of these elements work together to create something subtle and powerful, a system where decision making is stripped down to the simplest form. And that's why vending machines don't just function as machines, they sell products. They function as machines that shape behavior.
Today's vending machines look nothing like the simple coin operated boxes that once dispensed gum or peanuts, but the core idea underneath them is exactly the same. What's changed isn't the principle, it's the scale of what we're willing to automate.
Modern machines now sell products that would have been unimaginable in earlier eras of vending. In airports, malls, and tech hubs, you can find machines that dispense electronics, headphones, chargers, even laptops. In some cases, in Japan, vending culture has expanded into nearly every category of daily life, with machines selling everything from hot meals to umbrellas to personal care items and even eggs, believe it or not.
Wow. But perhaps the most striking evolution is the expansion into high value goods. There are now systems where even cars can be sold through automated self service models. Carvana, not that we're sponsored by them, unfortunately. I mean, have you seen the car towers that Carvana has there? I really wonder, is it like an escalator or elevator? How do you get the cars up there that's high?
I mean, you can get anything out of a vending machine today.
It's insane.
But, just think the vending machine itself was created over 2,000 years ago by someone in Alexandria, Hero, and he is a hero.
So while Hero came up with the initial idea back in the AD hundreds, Percival is really who got the recognition for it, except for in this episode of Info on the Go.
And, to the vending machine. I mean, as a kid, I used to get gum and all kind of stuff out of them. And maybe we do a dash somewhere down the line about, black market vending machine and the different crazy stuff. But
Black market vending machines, you say? What?
yeah, weird items sold globally. I don't know. Maybe. We'll have to see. Maybe it's a Patreon. I don't know. But Kat, that's pretty much all I've got.
Me too. If you would like to support this podcast, tell a friend and help get the word out.
If you would like to help support the show, you can do so at Patreon or snag some of those deals from our sponsors. You can find those links in the show notes.
And as always, William and I want to thank you for listening.
From day one to now, thank you.
You can join the Facebook group and Info on the Go,
Over there, you can get to know us.
or ask a question.
But whatever you do, make sure you hit that follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Send us fan mail using the link in the show notes, or even leave a review.
Leaving that review really does help others find us. You can email Kat and myself directly at
infoonthegopodcast@gmail.com.
and we do read all of those emails. All of this is in the show notes. Till next time.
Stay curious.
If your stomach's been off lately, like bloating, reflux, or just not feeling right, there's a simpler way to get back on track.
With Professor B's Digestive Aid, which is an all-natural blend of pure honey and ancient apitherapy, a herb rooted in Roman tradition. You know how at least they had some things right? It's designed to gently support and balance your digestion.
No long ingredient list, no harsh additives, just two powerful, time-tested ingredients working together. It's even the same formula used to help cancer patients manage digestive discomfort.
And right now, you can get an exclusive 10% off any product. Just use our code INFOGO at checkout.